Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
The Office of Special Counsel occupies a complicated place in the federal system. Part protector, part enforcer, and increasingly a test of trust for career employees. As demand rises and scrutiny intensifies, OSC is formally defining how it sees that role over the next 5 years. My guest is Charles Baldis, Senior Counsel and Designee to the Acting Special Counsel at the Office of Special Counsel. Mr. Baldis, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really interested to dig into the Office of Special Counsel with you. You play several roles at once. You're investigator, enforcer, protector of the merit system. How does the agency today internally define what its primary responsibility is?
Our primary responsibility is exactly what Congress gave to us in our statute, to safeguard the merit system and to protect federal employees who come forward with disclosures of wrongdoing. The mission is reflected also in our new strategic plan's first goal to protect and promote the integrity and efficacy of the federal workplace, and it drives every decision that we make.
Some federal employees are saying they experience OSC less as a protective backstop and more as an enforcement authority. From inside the agency, how do you make decisions about where protection ends and enforcement begins?
There's no bright line where protection ends and enforcement begins, as you say. We protect by enforcing the law. I mean, that's what Congress empowers us to do. When we receive a complaint, we investigate the facts impartially. Impartiality is very important here to preserve our credibility and in order to obtain cooperation from federal agencies. If we find a violation, we protect the employee by seeking corrective or disciplinary action as appropriate, and we enforce the law by holding the responsible parties accountable. That dual role is deliberate. It deters future misconduct and builds public confidence that the merit system actually works.
Your strategic plan specifically says that the agency is committed to curbing waste, fraud, abuse, illegality, and threats to public health. How do you see those all as sort of an enforcement and protection landscape?
Well, as you know, we have multiple components that do different things. We have our investigations and prosecution division that enforces the personnel laws to protect federal employees. And we also have our disclosure division, which receives whistleblower disclosures regarding certain matters that go on within the federal government that need to be addressed. For example, waste, fraud, and abuse, or threats to public health and safety. And when we receive those disclosures, we evaluate them and consider their, truthfulness and their substantiality, and then we refer them as appropriate to agency heads to require investigations to attempt to address those issues. And so that's kind of how everything works here, and that's why we value whistleblowers so highly and try to protect them.
The OSC saw a record number of new cases in 2025, 9,820 cases, a 57% increase over 2024. What do you think was driving the increase in claims and cases?
Well, it's only speculation on our part as to what specifically was driving it, but I suspect it probably had to do with the significant amount of turbulence that was going on, the policy changes that were going on in the administration. I know Director Cooper of the Office of Personnel Management has talked about the reduction in the federal workforce that occurred during that time. And this is not all that uncommon. Anytime you see significant turbulence, you're going to see an increase in the number of concerns and the increase in the number of filings. And we'll deal with those fairly and impartially as we do with all filings. But that's more or less all I can say about the issue. We just receive cases and then we respond to those cases.
How then are you balancing the pressure to process that volume of cases efficiently with the need to give individual whistleblower or retaliation claims meaningful scrutiny?
I would say we've been balancing it exceptionally well. The primary reason that we've been able to manage this influx so well is because we have a truly excellent staff of career civil servants who do their jobs with a high degree of dedication and competence. I've been very straightforward with the team ever since I came on board last year. I told them this is going to be a challenge and we're going to have to work harder than ever to maintain quality while processing so many cases as quickly as possible. And they've responded very well. They've really stepped up. I mean, this is a mission-driven agency to begin with. Our statutory mandates are very specific. It really helps to keep the team focused on individual goals. And so they took on this challenge and have achieved a remarkable level of success. At the same time, one of the investments we're making is into exploring the use of technology to improve our efficiency, AI in particular, and we have been very pleased with the results so far. We began integrating the use of AI into our systems last year carefully and with all the safeguards that you need in a law enforcement agency, and we are already seeing significant efficiency improvements in case processing times. We're hoping to see more in the future as we develop these capacities, but it does really look like it could be a game changer.
As you're thinking about balancing that workload, and as you've just described the introduction of technology, if a career federal employee was weighing today whether to raise a concern or file a complaint, what should they reasonably expect from OSC in terms of response, and how might that shape their decision-making?
We will treat all filings, whether complaints or disclosures, with the fullness of our consideration. That means we'll evaluate it according to the law that we have been given, whether it's a prohibited personnel practice complaint that alleges a violation of 5 U.S.C. 2302, or a Hatch Act violation complaint, or a disclosure under one of the 6 disclosure categories. And we will evaluate that objectively, impartially, and give it all due consideration and try to maximize our consideration of all interests involved.
I'm speaking with Charles Baldis. He is Senior Counsel and Designee to the Acting Special Counsel in the Office of Special Counsel. Mr. Baldis, with all of that conversation we just had, sort of setting the stage for what's happening in OSC today, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about your new strategic plan. You've just issued this new 5-year strategic plan. What were you trying to get after in the goals and the mission and the document?
Well, the first thing I want to say is to thank the team of OSC employees who really did the hard work in putting this together over a period of about 10 months. I had input into the process, but they really did all of the difficult parts of putting this thing together. And it was 17 employees that didn't want to be named, and so I'm not going to name them, but I want to thank them before I talk about that. And I'll just say in big picture terms, we didn't see this as a very significant shift away from previous strategic plans because, again, as I mentioned earlier, our mission is a fairly specific and statutory one. It's laid out in the code, Chapter 12 of Title V, and it doesn't allow for a tremendous amount of deviation. But within that context, there are 2 things that I think that we tried to emphasize in this strategic plan when compared to previous strategic plans. And one is a recognition of the fact that we are in an era of more scarce resources and that we need to be more efficient and do more with less. And a big part of that is attempting to streamline our operations to the extent possible and to integrate technology, as I mentioned earlier, in particular AI. We think AI will be very promising for us over the next 5 years, and that was why it was included in our strategic plan. The other thing I think we wanted to emphasize a little bit more was, along with the Trump administration's emphasis on addressing waste, fraud, and abuse, which has always been a component that we of our disclosures that we've been interested in, but trying to amplify consideration of those interests and to try and help on the enforcement side to the extent that we can play a role in that. We're hopeful to see that encouraged more, and that's why we put that in our strategic plan as well.
Walk us through the priorities and goals that you've established here.
We've laid out 3 strategic goals as part of our strategic plan. First, to protect and promote the integrity and efficacy of the federal workplace, which is part of that emphasis on efficiency as well as the merit system. But integrity, of course, has always been a long-time emphasis of ours. Number 2, to ensure government accountability. That means in terms of the use of taxpayer resources, taxpayer dollars, to make sure that the money is being spent well, that it's not being wasted or frittered away. And 3, to achieve organizational excellence, both within the Office of Special Counsel as a whole, as well as to encourage organizational excellence on the part of other agencies that we interact with, because that is also a part of our role. Our core values, the core values that we've laid out here are integrity, impartiality, and excellence, because we think that it's a slightly smaller list, but it simplifies and really amplifies, I think, the primary themes that we want the Office of Special Counsel to emphasize in our enforcement activities.
This is a 5-year plan. If you're successful in executing it 5 years from now, how will the operations of OSC be different?
Well, hopefully the core operations won't be too different, but ideally what we'd like to see is, as I mentioned earlier, a greater amount of efficiency, the ability to address more cases with faster timelines. We have built on some of the modifications that had been made under Henry Kerner's term here at the Office of Special Counsel when he created the Case Review Division. We're hoping to improve the functionality of that division. We've seen some personnel shifts in the process. We have just come out of a hiring freeze, and so we are building up now our staffing to try to address some of the case backlogs that had built up over last year, but were adequately addressed. And in 5 years, I expect that if our office is producing results at a roughly similar rate at a lower price point, I think that will be a certain kind of success, but we are hopeful that we will see even higher results than what we have now.
And how do you hope federal employees feel about the office at the end of that 5-year plan?
We hope that they trust us and that they know that they can come to us and that we will keep their confidentiality and that we will fairly treat their claims and assess their claims. And if we believe those claims have merit, we will advance those claims before the Merit Systems Protection Board and fight for the best result possible for their situation.
I've been speaking with Charles Baldis. He's Senior Counsel and Designee to the Acting Special Counsel in the Office of Special Counsel. Sir, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
We'll post this interview at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Subscribe to the Federal Drive wherever you get your podcasts.